Welcome back to Coffee and Conversation. For all of our Audie fans, he is in the bedroom. I started to change the bed this morning, but Audie wanted to help. That usually puts the brakes on any serious cleaning, reorganizing project, because despite the fact that Audie truly believes he's helping, it sure doesn't look that way from where I'm standing. So I decided to let him play in the comforters and the pillows and whatever, and maybe he'll kind of tire of that and wander off, and I'll be able to actually change the bed without his active assistance. But we'll have to see. And heaven knows, I know he means well, because he will be purring his little kitty brains out the whole time that he's in there helping me / playing with my stuff. Loves it. So I have to respect where he's coming from. When we come back from the intro, I thought we would revisit an issue we'd hit before, but I personally kind of need this extra little jump. So I thought I would share it with you too. So in a moment when we come back, before we get started, I wanted to just share something with you. This sweater I got specifically at the suggestion of our viewers, who said they thought I would do better with some nice mustard colors in my wardrobe. Also, they suggested burgundy. Back to burgundy in a moment. So I got this sweater, and it is basically mustard, but it's a touch more on the brown side. Crêpe Poupon mustard. And I really like it. I got it from a company called Sketlieu. Now, having said that, I have to pull back and say, I think because this company is from Ireland and not Icelandic, and I just gave you the Icelandic pronunciation of this word, that's probably not how they pronounce it. So here's the word. Take your best guess. I do know how it's pronounced in Icelandic, because it's not like a really strange kind of word. It means scary. So it's a relatively commonly used word. I tried looking it up in Irish Gaelic, and I got only one resource, one, that suggested this word in Irish Gaelic means high precipice or promontory. That would make a lot more sense for a sweater company than scary. On the other hand, I do see a connection between a high promontory, or like a dangerous precipice, and scary. Seems to work out. I will have to try to track down the word origin. Did that come to the Irish from the Vikings? Because many of our words did. And boy, this sure does have an Old Norse look to it. Anyway, this is the name of the company, and they are online. I get nothing from them. This is not sponsored. This is not a promotional. I'm just sharing with you a resource that really worked out for me. Because you know my philosophy on that, I do not sell my viewers to people who are trying to merchandise to you. No, that doesn't happen. This just happens to be a place where I got this 100% merino wool. Fantastic. I've worn it 3 or 4 times since I've gotten it. No pilling, no stretching. It looks as good after 3 or 4 wearings as it did the first time I pulled it out of the package. So, yeah, nice, because you can't always guarantee that with sweaters. I've gotten a couple of sweaters that, oh, they were so pretty and they looked great, but boy, they didn't hold up. This one's doing fine. And this was $61. I swear, that's it. So, yes, lovely Irish wool sweater, $61 and free shipping. So that's why I wanted to tell you about the company, because this is a great place to go if you want sweaters. Yum. Back to burgundy. So some of you said go with mustard. Others said go with burgundy. I got another sweater in burgundy. I'll show you a picture of that because, you know, I keep pictures of everything I buy. Blame David Beckham for that. Boy, that guy turned me into a neurotic about my wardrobe. So here's a photo of the burgundy sweater. It is a man's sweater. It looks just like this in the picture. I don't have a problem with buying men's clothing. Frankly, if I can get a better deal on men's clothing, I will. And I think that this one was about $65. Same general price range. And again, it's beautiful, holds up well, incredibly durable, and in the $65 range, to be honest with you, that's around half what I usually pay for sweaters. And hey, free shipping. So, wanted to share that with you. All right, let's get into this. Spring is coming. It is getting warm and sunny out, and I really feel the desperate need to do a bit of spring cleaning and decluttering. Now, as I've mentioned, I'm going into surgery Monday morning, St. Patrick's Day. Oh, and happy St. Patrick's Day to all of you. Going in Monday morning. The surgery is going to go well because I'm doing it on St. Patrick's Day. What could be luckier than that? And then I will probably have limited activity for a while and a lot of time on my hands. So what better way to utilize that time than to do a bit of cleaning and decluttering? And I look around and say to myself, oh, Lord, I need to do this. And I think, I don't want to. I don't even know where I want to begin. But I have a bunch of tips and tricks. And 10 of my favorites are the ones that we're going to talk about today. And I wanted to share it with you because cleaning and decluttering is not a one and done thing, much as I wish it were. I like that. I want to do something and never have to look at it again. That's my philosophy on everything in life. Let me do the job right now and I will never have to do it again. That's just not how life works. And it irritates me, but I accept the reality. So the thing is that cleaning and decluttering is an ongoing process. We have to keep doing it. And in order to keep doing it, we have to be able to retain our motivation, our sense of accomplishment. We have to be able to continue to psych ourselves up for this process. And the tips and tricks also include a few little psychological tricks to get us more comfortable with the need to declutter and downsize a little. Because most of us have a lot of stuff we could stand to get rid of. So I know I've spoken with you about this before, but it's my time for a refresher course, and I assume some of you are probably in the same boat because, like I say, warm, sunny spring rolls around, and I think we all start to feel the need to do this. So let's take a look at these little tips. And I separated them into, 5 categories. Yeah, I ought to know that off the top of my head, but I really didn't. 5 general categories. And I'm going to start off with the cost. And I put cost in quotes when I wrote this up. Cost is more than just money. That's the thing we need to remember when we start looking at getting rid of things, however you want to. And by the way, I'm not saying that you have to throw things in the trash. Donate, gift them to friends, you sell them on eBay, whatever you want to do. But the things that need to move out of your environment one way or the other. So cost is more than just money. We need to look at the fact that saving things for just in case is taking up our space, our time. It's taking up space and time in our brains as well. It's like all of this stuff is not just cluttering our homes, it's cluttering our minds. And when your mind is cluttered, well, I don't know about you, but I do know for me, it gets harder and harder to keep myself motivated to do the things I need to do. Because, I got all that junk, cobwebs gathering space. So number one, stop saving things for just in case. If you don't need it, if you are not using it, it's time to let it go, because saving it just in case you might need it in the future is not working out. And the question is, have you needed it in the past? And if you have not needed it in the past, it's not very likely you're going to need it in the future. And in some cases, we are saving this little thing maybe in our kitchen cutlery drawer, just in case we ever decide we want to make melon balls. Gosh, melon ballers. Most people have a melon baller in their drawer, and I have to say, I don't recall ever going to anybody's house, ever, where they said, here, have some melon balls. We have all kinds of stuff like that. And we think, well, what if we want to make melon balls? The question is, have you ever wanted to make melon balls? Well, I think that's a self-explanatory question. So it's not just little things. Keep in mind, a lot of us have things like a guest room, a room in your house reserved for guests. And if you have guests who come frequently, well, then that's a good thing. But if you don't, if the last time you had a guest in your guest room was 1997, maybe it's time to redesignate that space. Turn it into a craft room, a project room, a storage room even. If I don't favor collecting stuff for the sake of keeping it in a storage room, but storage room if there's no other use for it. But we need to stop the just in case thinking. We need to be living in the here and now. And things change all the time. Our lives change. Things that made sense to us, like maybe that guest room back in 1997, may not make sense anymore. So that's what we need to wrap our heads around. And two, this is tip number 2. Whatever it is, understand that if you actually do ever need it, you can buy it again. If you ever do decide you are going to make melon balls, you can buy another melon baller. Lord knows they're not very expensive. If that guest room that hasn't been used since 1997, if suddenly, your cousin from out of town calls and says, I'd like to stay with you for 6 months, you can turn that room, which maybe you turned into a craft room or maybe a place to show off your plants, you can always turn it back into a guest room. None of these suggestions are permanent and absolute, because even if you get rid of something, it doesn't mean you can't put something similar back in its place if it turns out that you really are going to use it in the future. 3, whatever it is in your house, you've already paid for it. That money is gone, period. And if you are convinced it's extremely valuable and you don't want to give it away, donate it, throw it away, sell it on eBay. But do not look at these things in terms of that is so valuable and expensive, because it was at one time valuable and expensive, but you paid the money for it. That money is gone, done. And keeping something that isn't working for you simply because at one point you paid money for it is just not sensible. It is in effect throwing bad money after good, in the sense, remember, your cost is more than just money. The headspace it's taking up, the room it's taking up, the chaos it's bringing into your life, all of that factors into the equation too. So if you have something that is just gobbling your time and energy, or a lot of things that are gobbling your time and energy, looking at it in terms of that costs so much money is only going to hurt you, because whatever it costs, past tense, you've already paid. So look at where it is now, not where it was when you first bought it. Next category is sentiment. And the bottom line is, don't be a slave to sentiment. You get a gift from somebody, great Aunt Martha sends you this utterly hideous vase. I don't know why it is I'm always referring to a hideous vase from some great aunt somewhere. But, oh, somebody gave me this. I can't get rid of it. Here's the thing. It's the thought that counts. You got it, you enjoyed it, and maybe it's time to move it on and let somebody else enjoy it too. You do not have to keep everything everybody gave you until the end of time. You are not, the person who gave it to you was not trying to burden you with this insane responsibility of making you the caretaker of an ugly vase until doomsday. Do you really think that's what Aunt Martha had in mind? No. No, somebody gave you a gift in order to make you happy. And when that gift is no longer making you happy, when it's adding to your chaos and your clutter, it's time to move it on. You can, again, gift it to someone else, donate it, sell it on eBay. If this is something that cannot be gifted, donated, sold, time for the trash. There is another little useful trick to put this one into perspective. If you pick up an item and you look at it and say, oh, this is just so precious and I can't get rid of it, ask yourself, would you be willing to track down your psychotic ex-partner that you can't stand anymore, who was the ruination of your life to begin with? Would you be willing to track down that person in order to get this item back? Let's assume they accidentally took it with them, or perhaps deliberately. Who knows how bad the ex-partner was? Would you be willing to track them down to get it back? That is a good little psychological trick that you can use to find out how much you really do love something. How important is it to you really? How far would you go to keep it? How far would you go to get it back? And if there are limits to how far you would go to keep it or get it back, maybe it's time to consider letting it go on its merry way. And again, like I say, it's a psychological trick that I don't want to call it a trick, because you're not really kidding yourself. You're just putting things in a different context. And sometimes that's what it takes in order to remove us from a sentimental attachment we have to something that is probably just bringing angst and chaos into our lives. So if you're looking at something and you would not track the crazy ex down to get it back, that's when you need to just say, clearly I can live without it. If there was enough of a punishment factor associated with retrieving this, then yeah, maybe it's time to consider letting it go. So this next one falls into the category of how we are able to create very realistic plans for downsizing. How do we actually structure this? What are we going to do? And there are 2 points in this little category. One is put realistic limits on the amount of stuff you can keep. For me, I have a realistic limit on the number of books I can keep because I will not allow myself to exceed the space in that bookcase. Now, the problem is I have, in fact, allowed myself to exceed the space in that bookcase. I have a stack of books, I would say probably we're working about a foot high on the arm of the chair behind me. I really do. But in fact, I know that I have to deal with that. They either have to go into the bookcase. That's part of why I'm feeling very strongly that I need to scale back, downsize, declutter, because that stack of books is giving me dirty looks. That's where it stops. For me, this is very realistic. It hasn't always been that way because there was a time when I did a better job of reading print, when I could have taken any one of those books out of there and just read it. I can't do that anymore. I've got a couple of Braille books in there, a few large print books. Most of that, could I read it? Lord, no. Am I willing to give up my beloved Jane Austens? Absolutely not. Am I willing to give up my entire collection of Joe Rowling? No, not happening. So I allow myself to keep some stuff. I'm not going to force myself to live a crazy Spartan lifestyle. No. I get to keep things, but I need to keep realistic limits on it. And this works for anything. It works for knickknacks. It works for clothing. It works for books. Name your poison. Everybody has different things they enjoy collecting. For me, sadly, it's books I can't read. But just put realistic limits. For me, it's convenient to put that one bookcase and say, this is it. This is all I'm willing to allow myself to keep. And when, like I said, with the pile of books behind me, when it starts to expand beyond the limits, that's when I know I have to deal with it. Another issue is taking individual categories of things. It's another way to help declutter and downsize. If you look at anything, books, china, kitchen utensils, whatever, again, you pick your poison and say, I am going to reduce all of this by 10%. And you just go around, you look at it. If I have 90 kitchen utensils, I need to get rid of 9 of them. If I have 90 books, I need to get rid of 9 of them. Just reduce it by 10%. And that is, it's a large enough reduction, because it's 10%, that it will make you feel a sense of accomplishment, but not so large that it's going to be painful. And that's one that I'm not sure it really works for me. I do better when I am not trying to give myself reductions. I do better when I just go in and say, I'm going to allow myself to keep 30% of this. That just because that works better with my thinking. But for other people, putting a limit on the reduction works. So I guess pick your poison. Tell yourself you're going to reduce everything by 10%, or if you're wired like I am, give yourself a percentage of what you will be able to keep. I am going to keep 30%, 90%, 75%, pick your own number, and go from there, because this can actually be very valuable because you will see the immediate results. If you say, I'm getting rid of 10%, and you do, you see that 10% as you're packing it up to go off to the donation pile or to eBay or to your friends, your kids, your cousins, whoever you're planning to send it off to. You can see the progress. It's very concrete. So next up, and this is our fourth category, is keep what you use. And the first part of keeping what you use is to figure out what you are using. So you got something, you haven't used it in a while, it's valuable, you look at it and say, well, this is a very useful item. You have to figure out, are you using it? And one of the best ways to do this is to track the usage. You can use a system, and there are all kinds of systems around there. Put colored tape on something. You put something away in a drawer, you take it out and use it. When you clean it and you're getting ready to put it back, just add a little strip of colored tape. And this is useful when you're not the only person in your environment. If you have a significant other, if you have kids, if you have parents, anybody else coming into your space using things. Because I think most of us are very clever when it comes to figuring out what we use. We know what we use, but we're not necessarily quite so good at figuring out what the other people in our lives use. You have something that you use frequently, your partner, your spouse, your children, your roommate, whatever, whoever is in your environment might look at that and say, I've never used that before in my entire life. You might pick something up and say the same. I've never used this before in my entire life. And suddenly you find out that this is your partner's favorite bookmark. And boy, are they glad to see it again. Give me that back. Track the things you use. Pay attention. The colored tape method is pretty good. Just slap a piece of colored tape on it. It's not always something that works. Because obviously you wouldn't put colored tape on a bookmark. At least I don't think you would. But there are many ways to do this, to take a look at how often something is getting used. That is just one suggestion. Another suggestion, and this is very good for how often you wear the clothing in your closet, is whenever you put something back in the closet, reverse the hanger. You take it out, you wear it. When you put it back in, switch the hanger. Just put it on backwards. Or, and this is the way I prefer to do it because, believe me, if I had to cope with reversed hangers, I'd be spilling stuff all the time. Pick it up from one end of the closet, put it back on the other. As long as you leave yourself some kind of little marker in there, which, by the way, I don't know about the rest of you, but I do keep little cedar blocks on hooks in my closet. Those are great place markers. You stick one of those little buggers in there, and you're always going to know the difference between not used yet and already used and put back. Very easy way to track things like clothing. So we can always find numerous ways to track and pay attention to the things we use. If you're keeping it in your life, it should be doing things for you. It should be pulling its weight, gosh darn it. And if it's not, that's when you start to consider, maybe this really isn't as valuable as I thought it was. And my final, and this is my personal favorite, and yes, I know, you can tell we're already over time, and I still haven't finished my list yet. This is my 6-month, $10 rule. I picked this one up in, I think it was the late 70s, very early 80s. This has been my go-to question whenever I need to figure out if I'm getting rid of something for more than 40 years. Have I used it in 6 months? Did it cost less than $10? If the answer to those two questions is, well, did I use it in 6 months? If the answer is no, and has it cost less than $10? If that answer is yes, out it goes. 6 months, $10. And that has served me well over the years. I will, of course, give myself little category breaks, because every now and then there are a few things you rarely use. For me, it was router bits. I'm sure I've told you this before. Router bits are this big. I could store all of my router bits in the palm of my hand, but recovering them, if I got rid of them, would be a nightmare. I might not even be able to get some of them back because some of them are old. Yes, I will allow myself to keep my router bits because, again, palm of my hand. They're not taking up much space. But it's a very good rule of thumb. However, I was thinking about this the other day as I was sort of obsessing on my need to, declutter, downsize, etc. I was thinking about this. If I adopted this rule 40 years ago, why am I still using $10? Because $10 in 1980 was $40 today. Why have I not revisited this and reformulated my notion of what is or is not valuable? And that's something I have to think about. I'm already thinking to myself, at the very least, minimally, I'm going to have to raise that $10 to $20. Because if I was willing to throw something out that was worth $10 or less in 1980, I should be just as willing to get rid of something that cost $20 or less. Remember, that's half of what the inflation calculator tells me I should be doing. I should be willing to do that. $20 or less, it should go out. Now, obviously, it's going to be a process to work my way up to 6 months, $40. And by the time I get there, I'm probably going to have to revise it again. It's probably going to be 6 months, $50. But that's when we go back to the other strategies we've talked about. You can always replace it. It's paid for. It's done. It's gone. Why am I stressing about it? All of these tips and tricks all fall back on themselves. They're part of like a cohesive strategy, because the point of this is to give us the incentive, to give us the thought processes that will help us overcome our natural resistance to hang on to junk and clutter, to cherish it like it is our firstborn child. And it's helping us to break bad patterns, break bad habits. So that is what I wanted to share with you today, because frankly, I needed this pep talk very desperately myself, because I have got to start doing this. This needs to be my new spring project. And I will have the time on my hands. So I need to be prepared to use it as constructively as I can. I'm sure many of you do as well. That is what I have for you today. My Audie boy did not abandon the bed and come out and visit us like I thought he would. But you know what? I have slideshows of Audie, so we're going to watch an Audie slideshow on the way out. I hope to see you all again next time. Meanwhile, have a terrific day.